Chapter 2 2. The sun colored the horizon and sent last rays through the castle's sharp-arched windows. In one of those hallways, the gentle light stroked the passing figures, dipping them in pink. The one who led the small group wore a crown and was used to it flashing in the glimmering light. Another man, sharing the age but not the elegance, concern in his fidgeting fingers, stole a glance at the prisoner the two guards dragged behind them. "Your Majesty," he said, making the king turn his head a little, "do you believe it is fair to take her up on the miller's words?" The king raised his eyebrows and halted. The look on his face was as though the man had just said something beyond comprehension. With a smile that hinted confidence, he put a hand on the other's shoulder. "You are my friend, valet, and my valet, but no jester." "But King Caleb—" Caleb cut him short with a serious frown. "He said she could spin straw to gold. I merely wish to test the truth of his words." Valet swallowed, shifting his weight onto one leg. "I know your strict rule, but don't you think—" "Liars are punished with death," Caleb said, eyebrows arched, as if it was that simple. Sliding his hand from Valet's shoulder, he lifted it in the air, palm up, gesturing innocence. "Every man knows my rule. If he is so stupid as to invite death, so be it." "But, my king," Valet said, pausing, testing if Caleb was to silence him again. Caleb didn't. "If she truly could spin gold, wouldn't that make her a witch?" Either way was suspicious and ridiculous. The king opened his mouth to respond, but someone came beforehand. "I'm not a witch." Both turned to the prisoner, Caleb with a haughty stare. Guards stood by her sides, each holding an arm. With their big hands, he entertained himself with a swift image of them breaking her bones. Snap. With that, spinning would be a difficult project to perform. He looked at her, took the entire time and patience that he required. Indeed, her hair was long and the waves in it slack like he imagined any woman to be. She, however, this miller's daughter, had become quite a challenge, a battle for taste and color, like the display on her face. She was fair, barely any color in her body, apart from tiny pigments of pink in her lips. And those brows, so light and golden pale, oh, that determined expression it held, it pleased him, and with a twinkle in his eyes, he bent a little to level her face. "Have you ever gazed upon a mirror, miller's daughter?" Caleb asked. Her nose creased with his encounter, remaining steadfast. "I have no need nor time for such a thing. People work to live," she said, her forehead inviting more crinkles, "unlike some others." Smugly, he pulled a corner of his lip. "What an arrogant girl you are," he said, clearly amused. "You have no need of a mirror, and yet your simple image is a feast to others' eyes." He gripped her chin. She flinched. When she realized his intentions weren't to kill her yet, but wiping at a gray spot, she relaxed as much as the situation allowed her to. "Unfair, don't you agree? Why do you think we didn't drag your father to the news the instant he said it, The other corner of his lips mimicked the first, creating a deep smirk. Your hair, he said. When he released her chin, she dropped it a little to build a curtain with her bangs to block his face. His chest came in her view, covered in expensive tunic, the red plush tail of a fox hanging from his neck. Parting a strand from her hair, he tossed it in the air. It basked in the sun's shine and seemed to emanate light on its own. Your hair appears much like gold itself, he said, shrinking the stretch to a smile, yet left a quirk to make it appear supreme. You believe that gossip? Valet asked in disbelief, mouth wide in shock. He agreed that she had yellow hair. He doubted that this fact would save her life. Slowly, Caleb straightened his back, losing the hair in the action. He turned to his friend with a cocky grin. As I've said before, we will test it. Motioning with a finger, he walked, and so did the rest of the small group. Valet was unable to grasp any conclusion and wondered if Caleb did all this just to see a few people die. For the following few minutes, they walked in silence, their steps bouncing echoes off the walls. Soon, they went down a spiral staircase. The air chilled with each breath, and the light dimmed with each descending step. Torches replaced the natural shine with a reddish glow. Once they reached the bottom, Caleb ordered a guard to open the massive door. The guard obliged. Caleb entered, as did the rest. He motioned for her to be set free, then for the guards to take the leave. They bowed and left. Smiling, Caleb closed the door and watched her turn in amazed circles. The room, or the more correct word, as it was, the dungeon, was small. There was straw everywhere, even on the wood that served as a pathetic bed. The only place untouched by straw was a narrow way in the middle, where a spinning wheel stood, accompanied by a stool for her to get to work. Valet handed her a candle. She took it with a small nod of saying thanks. This should be all? Caleb said, pitching his voice at the end, making it a question. She heard slight interest to have her as comfortable as possible. She met his face. His became amused with the mischievous shadow. Certainly, a dim-lit cell of death with flickering flames ascended that. Don't look so melancholic, Caleb said, receiving an irritated cross of arms as good as the candle allowed. You may be worth all that idle gossip. I do hope you feel welcome. She grimaced in what he believed was supposed to be a smile. I assume this room isn't very different from your home, is it? Scandalized, she opened her mouth, and when she was to pour her anger over him, he simply disappeared through the door. Valet gave a short bow to her before he jogged after his king. The guard shut the heavy door from the outside, and darkness fell around her. There were no rods, no windows. The only hope she had was in her hand, and it didn't burn brightly. Valet caught up to Caleb when they ascended, leaving the dark hallway and despair behind. What if she kills herself? Caleb raised a neat, blonde eyebrow at him. If she wants to die, she merely needs to leave the straw untouched. Apparently answer enough, they made their way in silence. They moved another story upwards, away from tragedies, and into a richly colored hallway. Red carpets and lucid torches showed them to their destination. Standing in front of his chamber doors, Caleb faced his friend, and when he saw Valet distressed, chuckled. What ails you? He asked, tugging on Valet's cap. Valet flung his hands to keep the attire in place, doleful. Caleb, you cannot truly believe all of this. Caleb thought Valet was too aroused by this event and took it all too seriously. He smiled, gave notion for Valet to open his door. Valet did so without hesitation. Follow me. His friend did as told and, once inside, deposited himself close by. Like any chamber of royalty, Caleb's was spacious, with a large bed, orderly cupboard, and a surface with a water basin. Valet observed his king refresh his face with it, then turn with a towel concealing his face. Once done, Caleb lowered the towel to see his valet rigid and too straight. He smiled. Relax, my friend. I can't, my king, Valet said. If she is a witch, she could bewitch all of us tonight and perhaps thirst for vengeance. Raising an eyebrow to deduce the ridiculousness and lifting a corner of his lip, Caleb dropped the towel on the polished marble floor. He threw himself onto his soft bed. Cozy. Valet broke his stance with an angular movement to pick up the towel off the pristine stone. You know of the legend, don't you? Caleb asked, staring at the curved encircling ceiling of his wide room. What legend? Lazily, the young king eyed Valet as he fulfilled his duty of folding the damp towel and putting it back on the surface for future use. The one this land rumors about ever since. Caleb rolled to his side, plucking cotton from his sheets as an occupation. Slipping his other hand under his head for a pillow, he felt Valet stand stiff again. He could bet his fortune on his friend's exuding anxiety and, maybe, the perspiration littered across his forehead. The legend of a magical creature, fairy if you will, who can make gold from something so simple a peasant owns. Though that gold holds no value for the fairy and feels it's a rather useless gift. You believe her to be the fairy, not a witch? Which fairy? Caleb waved a dismissive hand, snapping a small cotton ball away. Valet struggled to catch it. Are you merely interested in this legend to prove its truth? Closing his eyes, he snickered into himself. Valet jumped to grab the cotton ball. Gold is quite valuable in my hands, I would say, Valet. Wouldn't you? 2 birds, 1 stone. Now hopping on one leg to hold balance, Valet opened his mouth, but crashed into the basin. It clattered and had sprung into shards by the time Caleb sat up. Caleb couldn't help but laugh at his friend, who now sat on the floor with pieces of shards in his brown hair, all wet from the water. The towel had been folded for nothing, because it lay like a snake about Valet's arm and shoulder, twisted and crinkled. Valet's face flushed. Don't make me reconsider your position, Valet, Caleb said, wiping a good-natured tear from his lashes. Valet bowed his head in deep respect and propped a hand on a knee to rise. He then slipped on a puddle and crashed face down with a desperate and hurtful squeak. His king laughed louder than before and waved a hand for Valet to come and sit by his side. Embarrassed and wincing, Valet obeyed. Caleb stilled his laughter to a kind giggle. He plucked the shard from Valet's cheek, releasing a flow of blood. Valet groaned to keep the blood inside of him as it trickled down his jaw. Quickly, Caleb pressed the white towel against the opened wound and plucked some more, smaller shards from his friend's skin. You're lucky it didn't hit an artery, Caleb said, wiping at the end of the towel on a bloody opening by Valet's chin. It's okay, Valet said, deforming his face as Caleb removed tiny pieces from his forehead. Sucking in a breath after a harsh pat, he recoiled. Hold still, Caleb protested with a stern expression, grabbing Valet's shirt by the collar, pulling him in. Caleb continued to fumble those splinters out of his friend's skin. From time to time, Valet would grunt and flinch. Once, Valet dared to look, Caleb's face was clean, and the usual cocky tilt of his chin gone. Seeing Caleb so engaged and focused, Valet had his doubts about the tongues his people floundered. They complained and told Caleb wicked and selfish. Valet doubted them. Their king was kind and caring. Caleb may have laughed, witnessing the awkward scene a moment ago, but it was Caleb himself who gave the wounded first aid. After several more hurtful touches, Caleb ordered Valet to go to the infirmary. Pressing the crimson-stained towel to his face, Valet bowed and wished his king a good night. And when he was to leave the room, Caleb said, "Make sure I am woken with the sun. I wish to see what the fairy is capable of."